Hi, friends. Coming at you um, in bed. And hopefully you are in a snuggly, warm place because it's not snuggly outside, is it? Unless you're the abominable snowman who, last I checked, no longer holds membership at our church. So we're going to dive into a passage out of Isaiah 62. Under the blankets, pants optional. So here we go. We're going to take it piece by piece, okay? Okay. For Zion's sake, I will not keep quiet. This is Isaiah 62. Remember? And for Jerusalem's sake, I will not rest. Until her vindication shines out like the dawn, and her salvation like a burning torch. This is going well. Isaiah is a prophet who is speaking either on behalf of God or perhaps God as God's self is speaking, and Isaiah is recording the words. Zion is another name, synonym for Israel, the chosen people, Jerusalem. And the message is that for the chosen people's, the city of God's sake, I, either Isaiah the prophet, or I, God, will not be quiet. I will not rest. And the idea here is not just a personal pledge of action, but that somehow, for the sake of God's city, for the sake of what God has built, there is action that is required of us. And this is one of the harder things for us, the idea to not stay silent when difficult things are going on around us in our world, with our friends, our family, or within ourselves. For the city of God's sake, I will not stay silent. I will not rest. I will do something. I will be active. Our voice is part of the future of God's kingdom. Our involvement is part of the future in God's kingdom. And I don't know what that looks like for you. I don't know what the ways are that you might still need to find your voice. And here on this Martin Luther King Day weekend, it doesn't have to be that you're the next Dr. Martin Luther King. Your voice might not be finding the crowds of millions and speaking out against social inequality and social justice issues, but your voice might be something that is more constant than it is now. To not stay silent requires a commitment to say, there are things that I know or believe that are happening that are wrong or not ideal or hurtful to people or not reflective of God. And you and I are charged with finding the way to be able to speak to or about or against those things with the power and privileges afforded to us in whatever those social or corporate circles look like. Isaiah is making that pledge here in this passage. Perhaps God is saying that pledge in the midst of too many people being silent and too many people resting on the sidelines. I will not stay silent and I will not rest. I will find a way to do and say something. Is that a pledge that you're willing to consider, to pray about, to enact? From Isaiah 62, the nations shall see your vindication, and all the kings your glory, and you shall be called by a new name that the mouth of the Lord will give. The idea is that this vindication is coming like a dawn. This vindication, the idea that God's name has to be vindicated. Why? There must be something going on at this time where God's name is mud, where God's name is not taken seriously, where God's word is not appreciated or listened to or believed. The vindication, one day it'll be vindicated. Right now it's not. In Isaiah's time, and maybe in our time. How often have we heard talk about religion, talk about God not being present in the ways that we expect or demand? And we are looking for some way for God to be vindicated, to come back and to have a revival, to get back to the good old days, whatever language you use. I like this idea that God's name will be vindicated in the dawn, because that means that whatever's going on during Isaiah's time is the night, and maybe you feel some of that now. The nighttime is a euphemism for a time that it's unclear where we're going because it's dark. It feels cold and isolated. And the promise that Isaiah is making on God's behalf is that God's not going to stay silent. God's not going to rest. And if we don't either, then there's coming a time when God's name will be not just shared again, but vindicated. It comes from the word meaning to conquer, victory. It'll be enough. You shall be a beautiful crown in the hand of the Lord, a royal diadem in your hand of God. Before we talk about the crown, I want to talk about the salvation as a burning torch. This idea that as we seek a path forward through the dark, this is not a scenario like a football stadium when all the lights go on and everybody can see everything and we're done. To understand salvation as a torch is following the one who is the torch bearer. The torch illuminates some of the path ahead, but not all of it. The torch flickers, is not constant. The torch emits smoke. It's a path forward, but it still has challenges. And this is important, brothers and sisters, because we want the football stadium kind of salvation, right? We want the answers just illuminated. We want our path to be so mind-boggling easy and clear. And we want everything just to work out, right? Of course, that's our hope. That's our prayer. And so this is a realistic depiction to say God's vindication coming like the dawn, and that salvation will be like following the one with a torch. One step at a time. A little bit of the path illuminated at the time. Friends, if you can accept this kind of calibration for your faith, I think it might be really helpful. Instead of us praying for the world on a platter, praying for world peace in the snap of a fingers, praying for full understanding, for full healing, for full restoration, maybe we accept that our faith journey is like following the one with a torch in the night. And that one step at a time is realistic for us. It's doable for us. What if your prayers start to look like, God, help me make peace with taking one step at a time? Help me to be okay to know that you are leading me somewhere with the torch. And I can see a little bit of it. I have a sense, but I don't have full understanding. I don't know where we're going. I don't know what it looks like. And that's okay. Because on that path, I can follow where you're leading with the torch. This part about the crown is so beautiful. Isaiah writes, you shall be a beautiful crown. This is God speaking. You shall be the beautiful crown in the hand of the Lord, the royal diadem in the hand of your God. Notice the pronoun use here. You, people of Zion, you listeners, you disciples, you apostles, you church shall be the crown. And what function does the crown have except to be the visible symbol of king and queenship? You, the people, will be the visible symbol to all who look at you. that you are serving the King of Majesty. You and I are the crown. And this isn't a comment about, oh, we're so beautiful and oh, we're so pretty. It's not about the attractiveness. It's not about the cost or the craftsmanship of the crown. It's got nothing to do with it here. This is a it's a vehicle that points to the more important piece, which is the king. I had a mentor in college who used to say that you are often the only Bible that anyone ever reads. People aren't just picking it up. People aren't researching this kind of stuff. They look at you, and if they know that you are trying to follow God, trying to follow the torchbearer of salvation, they're going to look at you and say, how does this person's words, actions, demeanor reflect what they say about the God that they serve? You and I are the crown. And as the crown, we are pointing to the king who has dominion. We're pointing to the master. We're pointing to the artist. We're pointing to the Savior and Messiah. Isaiah goes on here and talks about how the kings will understand one day, with the implication being that right now they don't. Right now, the leaders of the world don't understand who's really in charge. And they don't understand because they're in their own way. We might relate today. People in power seek to hold on to that power. They seek to understand that power is relating to them, that it's beholden to them, that it's owed to them. And most of our leaders and most of us don't have a great understanding on truly God as king. Not just the creator that sets it up and walks away. Not just the one that will send Jesus for a time to help us get back on track. The one who is at the center of it all, because this is his kingdom. And people look to us to see that as a reflection, as a truth. They might not get that anywhere else in their lives. But what we say, what we do, how we react, how we judge or welcome, how we love or hate, determines what that crown looks like to the people around us in our lives. You are the crown, the royal diadem that points to the true king to which you serve. One day the kings will see this and will be called a new name. I don't know if you can hear that. We're having quite a cat situation here in the bedroom. And that's all part of it. You know, preaching from bed has a lot of fun challenges. And that's just one of them. It's very late. I know that. Isaiah says that we'll be called by a new name. Now, there's the name changes all throughout Scripture. They're important. And they're important not because they're cool. It's not about nicknames. It's because they give a connotation about what has happened and what is now expected. So Jacob has his name changed to Israel, which means wrestles with God, something that he did and something that he will continue to do. Saul has his name changed from Saul to Paul. It's very close. It's very similar. He still retains the essence of who he was, but there's a tweak. Now he's using his skills, he's using his education, his passion, but it has changed from persecuting people of the way to now being the greatest evangelist of the 2nd century. The prophet is talking about this time that is coming. There's an acknowledgement that the world is in the dark and that God's name, which should be exalted, is in need of vindication. And that this isn't going to happen overnight. It'll be like following a torch, smoke-filled and flickering, one step at a time. But that as people see our efforts, see us as the crown, and start to slowly understand in our very imperfect way who the true king is, the names will change. And we'll understand God in perhaps a greater capacity. You know, I wonder if you, as you're listening to this, think about the names that you call God. And they're not right or wrong. They're what's important and helpful to you. Most of us in America think of God as a listener, as a comforter, as a creator. But it's interesting, if you've traveled overseas in different places and probably even in America, God plays different roles and is known by different names. In places of great food insecurity, God is sometimes known as provider. In places with low infrastructure for healthcare, sometimes God is known as healer. There's so many names, so many facets, so many avenues of God. And I don't know if you're anything like me, but I tend to use, 3 to 5. What if this is a small challenge that you can choose to take or not? Pray to God by a new name this next week. Think about aspects of God that maybe aren't always really apparent to you, but you believe deep down are part of who God is, and use that as God's name. Turn the tables. God's in the business of giving us a new name. It's beautiful. Sometimes it's life-changing. We've got these biblical heroes who go through these moments of name change. What if we expanded our God vocabulary and prayed to God not just as God, Abba, Father, Rabbi, Teacher, Healer, Sustainer, Creator, Alpha, Omega, Lover? What does it look like for you to expand your God vocabulary and maybe challenge yourself to pray to God and know God in a new name beyond what you've always called God? The passage wraps up here where Isaiah is talking about, my delight will be in her. The land will be married, and one day this will come to fruition. Now, this my delight is in her is actually a translation of the name Hephzibah, which is the queen of the time. She goes through this recent marriage to Hezekiah, who's the king of Judah, which is where Isaiah is. And so God's saying, not only will my delight be in her, but he's acknowledging the new queen of the time, the new change in leadership, and is going to be present throughout. Unless you've been under a rock recently, you know that we've got new leadership in our country happening on Monday. A reminder that God is present through every moment. God is present and with us through every president, every regime, every period, every cycle. And God is ultimate king. The early Hebrews, I'm sure, had a very contentious relationship with worldly power. They rarely were in power and almost always under it. The idea of kings and leaders and judges and prophets correctly leading them back to God was always a hope and pipe dream, and rarely a reality that came to fruition. What are the ways that you as an individual, you as a family member, you as a church or temple or mosque or synagogue member, contribute to honoring the true God, regardless of what local, state, federal, national leaders do or don't do? How is your faith tethered to true power? This is more than a cliche rhetorical question. To have that grounding, that tethering, helps us weather the ups and downs. This notion that the land will be married might strike us as strange. The Hebrew word for married actually means to lord over. And this understanding opens a glimpse into so many of the relationships in antiquity. Today, we are working on being champions of marriages that are in full equality, with equal voice, equal power, and vulnerability alike. This is a pretty radical idea. And by radical, I mean recent, comparatively. We raise our eyebrows and roll our eyes and, shake our heads with all of these understandings of marriage as being acquisitions of property where women are treated pejoratively and not as equals. This was the paradigm. This is the template for thousands of years. Like I said, we're working to change that. But for language here to say that the land will be married is that you will have control over this land. One day you will be able to have this land as your own. In fact, this whole passage is about a one day looking to the future. And I think sometimes this can be a frustrating thing for us in faith. It feels like, we're always talking about someday off in the future, and it's nebulous and it's unknown. But for me, it's also what hope is built around. It's the promise that things as they are not the default. They're not the worst, and they don't have to be the future. The idea of faith is that we're taking one step at a time. We're following the torchbearer. We're trying to navigate the waters that would bring us to a more complete, righteous, and wholesome understanding and relationship with God. Your faith journey is trying to improve yourself, to improve the ways that you listen and understand God's call in your life, to find your voice that you wouldn't be silent, to find the ways that you don't have to rest and feel like you're sitting the sideline as the world happens around you, to find a way that you, as the crown to so many people, point to the leadership, kingship, and deity who is God. The idea of chasing one day is what fuels us. The notion and reality that things are not perfect now give us the passion to take one more step. Give us the drive and the ambition to keep working at this, to have the conversations, to do the introspection and reflection, because God is worth it. Because a religion of connectivity is worth it. Because a world where love wins the day and unity is more powerful than division is worth it. What steps will you take moving forward? What new understandings and names will you call upon God to help you in this journey as you follow the torchbearer one step at a time? Not able to see it all, but able to see enough. And God's grace, God's leading, and God's love will be enough for us, at least for one more day. Peace and love, brothers and sisters.